Okay, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a really fun little comparison for you guys that has been a little while in the making. I didn't want to jump straight into the comparison just because I wanted to really experience this Hanhart in some greater detail before really comparing it to other mainstays within, my collection as well as many other collectors' collections in the Murph 38 as well as the Seiko Prospex Baby Alpinist. And I try to make this as much of an apples to apples comparison as possible. Of course, there's going to be difference in pricing. There's difference in where these are manufactured, whether it be Germany, Switzerland, or Japan. And then, you're even getting some aftermarket bracelet options versus OEM here. But I did want to kind of get it as close to a one-to-one in terms of the aesthetic. There are things, of course, you could swap out. Yes, you can put different bracelets on the Alpinist. Yes, you could put different bracelets on the Hamilton. They even have an OEM option that you can buy equipped with it now. I personally prefer this aesthetic that's on the Uncle Straps bracelet better. And then, of course, it is going to be compared to this brand new Hanhart, which has pretty much everything included. But of course, at an increased cost, and it's not exactly, just dominating in every facet. I mean, there are going to be trade-offs with the movement choices in terms of whether it be the beat rate or the longevity of the power reserve. So, as well as even the ability to manually adjust. So there's going to be a lot of trade-offs, but these at the same time are all pretty similar looking with the cathedral hands, with the, Arabic numeral layout, and generally feeling like great everyday general purpose type of watches that really excel outside of just kind of maybe their more humble field or flight roots. So with all that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get these pieces in hand, and take a closer look. Okay guys, so we see all three of them here, similar aesthetics, different countries of origin, different approaches to things. You're getting one that's going to have more water resistance, less water resistance, no screw down crown, and then something that's somewhere in the middle, right? You got 200 meters, 150, but both of these have screw down crowns. You have this one with a push pull crown with 100 meters of water resistance. You're going to have varying different applications of things like the anti-reflective coating. There's going to be differences within the sculpting of these cases, within the aesthetic for the dials, whether they be more of a kind of modern, clean vibe, or more of a patinaed vibe, or maybe somewhere in between. And then different price points, right? So this is going to be a newer one that's actually been selling out very quickly. So you're probably going to pay a good amount of full price for it, around $13.70, on the bracelet. Whereas for the Hamilton, depending on how you do things, you can get this for $8.95 MSRP, and then you can throw on an aftermarket bracelet, or you can spend a little bit more and get it on that OEM bracelet. And then these baby Alpinists were just recently actually discontinued, I believe, but they went for $700 MSRP. And actually, you could find them for various dealers brand new for under $500. And then, of course, you still have money left over for bracelets. But when it's time to kind of grab a watch like this, I could see you grabbing for any one of these in terms of kind of that everyday adventure piece that has great legibility, serves great visual iconography in terms of the aesthetic, feeling like a tool watch, feeling like a purpose-built tool there, and of course having that numeral dial layout, and with the cathedral hands, it's just a really fun balance and formula. Now, are there any out of these three brands that really own this aesthetic? Of course, the Alpinist line is very famous within Seiko, and this is a variation of one of their more popular dials, which I feel just happens to look a little bit more like these two, whereas these two aesthetics are actually a lot more purposeful, with the Hamilton being something to where they actually did have some historical significance, but it was much later, but just more recent in terms of the fact that this was a piece together for the movie Interstellar, and it wasn't something that was already in their catalog. They did have another watch, a Pioneer watch, funny enough, named in tribute of the original, Pioneer watch here, at least in terms of the Pioneer Preventor. And I mean, this design language with the handset has been something that Hanhart has really owned for the longest amount of time, even though this watch is the newest one to kind of take on this aesthetic. Typically, you would find it with like an offset, small seconds, or, on one of their signature chronographs. Whereas Hamilton really got some mainstream success by distilling it and simplifying it into kind of a 3-hand layout, and then later on shrinking it down, within a really nice space. These are actually going to be a little different in size, 38 versus 39 millimeters here. So not that different on wrist, but on paper, I think those are going to be some sticking points. Some people might feel like there's one that's a sweet spot and one that is unbearably small or too large, considering, what their preferences are. But I will say, in reality, they're going to be very similar. Whereas, funny enough, the other 38 millimeter watch here wears much smaller because of the contours and the shapes that you're going to get from this Prospex Baby Alpinist. Another thing you're going to get also is going to be that applied logo, which is really, really nice and handsome. Also, again, maximum water resistance there out of the group at 200 meters versus 100. And then this without a screw down crown, not the most confidence inspiring. And then here 150 meters, but with a screw down crown. And then again, there's going to be other trade-offs there. You're getting the full 4 hertz sweep here, but with the smallest, shortest power reserve at 38 hours, right? From the Sellita movement that this has, versus the Hamilton, you're going to get a slower beat rate at 3 hertz with their caliber H10, which is going to be based off of ETA's architecture, but you're going to get the longest power reserve at 80 hours of power reserve, but again, at the price of reducing the beat rate, so that sweep isn't going to be quite as smooth by comparison, and some of you might say it's very negligible, but you'll know that it's a lower beat rate. And also, one of the things it advantages that this movement as well as the Seiko have are that they do allow for manual adjustments in terms of timing if they're off. Now, while here, this is generally a pretty well-regulated movement out of box, the only issue is that you can't go get it regulated, by a regular watchmaker because they don't have the manual adjustment positions or anything like that, the tools within that movement anymore. And it's something that you'll have to send in if you did have an issue with it. I'm not having an issue with any of these movements, but it is something to think about in terms of longevity. So you are going to have that 80-hour power reserve here. Also an extended power reserve, but just at 70 hours of power reserve and still the same beat rate. But then the nice thing in terms of the trade-offs are, one, generally going to be more dialed in terms of timekeeping. Here can be a little bit more hit and miss, but you can actually do manual adjustments on it, whether it be yourself, popping open the case back and, turning the screw there, or by you taking to get it regulated, by your local watchmaker. So again, there's trade-offs with all of these watches. The thing that I really think sets, of course, the Hanhart apart is that I feel like they really, of course, with the input of the great TGV from the Urban Gentry channel, he made this into, basically all the things that you kind of felt for drawbacks within the Murph. You kind of resolve those here, right? You at the cost, the one trade-off being the lower power reserve, but ultimately you're going to have something that's going to be more versatile in terms of the movement inside and more versatile in terms of the visual appeal, because you don't have to worry about the warmth of that faux Tina. Here it's going to be clean and crisp. You're also going to have, lume on that seconds hand, and you're going to have even a pop of red, making it a bit more dynamic as well. Screw down crown, increase increased water resistance, a factory bracelet option that really flows beautifully with the case. Really nice in terms of the push button, right? Fully milled. Everything is milled nicely. Here, this is a really nice bracelet from Uncle Straps, but, in terms of the construction, it's not quite as nice in terms of, this, which feels very, it's definitely more pedestrian by comparison. It does have nice finishing though, and everything like that. And you can see it's nicely signed. I think they have even updated the branding since there, but it does the job. But again, it's just nothing too exciting. And again, you can get this now with an OEM bracelet. I'm just not a huge fan of the more angular, styling of that. And I think this one is overall better looking. And then here, this watch didn't originally come on a bracelet, but this is a Seiko Alpinist bracelet, which is, basically reverse compatible, and you can do that and still have the OEM. But then with that, it's also, going to be, in terms of the pins, right? They're not going to have the same robustness as screw pins. They're being, regular push pins. So, there's that, but you are getting increased water resistance and something that's going to be overall more robust. And from that perspective, and, still ties in, has a great heritage in terms of the Alpinist line, and this being an update on that. And, overall, very dynamic with that gradient to it, with the play of, certain, warmer elements and brighter elements, which might be a turnoff for some as well, right? So it can be more polarizing, but some people might love this more. And, but also there might be more people that hate this and would never consider it. Whereas I think overall the most likable watch at face value is going to be this one, just because it's kind of a better compromise. But with it being a better compromise also means that it's not going to be quite as polarizing and overall as dynamic as something like these, where, hey, if you're really into Interstellar, the film, this could really speak to you. Or if you're a huge, Seiko fanatic, then something like this could be really great for you as well. So with that said, let's actually get these on the wrist and compare how they all wear. Okay, so we'll start with the newest contender here. I think this looks and wears absolutely fantastic. Look how flat that is. But it is a 39 millimeter versus the 38 here, which I think wears beautifully, even though, by the numbers, when we get into the calipers there, the Hanhart is actually thinner. I will say there's something that makes the Hamilton seem thinner. Maybe it's just its smaller size. It just, on the wrist, it's just beautiful. And I mean, it's not a watch that I ever complained about the way that it wore. I wish it were bigger. I wish it were smaller. Of course, if I get my wrist a bit too close to the lens here, you're going to notice that there's going to be a fair amount of perspective distortion. It's going to make the watch seem much larger than it actually is. So what I like to do is keep my wrist nice and low and then just tighten up the frame so that you guys can get still a, detailed look, but just add a bit of truer aspect ratio as to how these might lay on your own wrist. And you can see they're very, very flat at just 10.4 millimeters thick there. That 45.8 millimeter lug to lug looks great, but slightly shorter lug to lug at 44 millimeters lug to lug, and just slightly taller at 11.2 millimeters, but still very tidy and very well tailored. I think that looks great. Now, one that we would probably throw in, of course, as an extra comparison is going to be this bad boy right here. So let's pop off the Hanhart and get on the Seiko. Okay. Now this is going to wear the most compact. So for those of you that are like into more explorer style watches, and I think this really, these watches in general definitely straddle that line, kind of the adventure explorer, air, land, and sea type of kind of do-it-all watch. Here, you're definitely going to get more within, for those of you that really like maybe the 36 millimeter wear of the modern explorer, which, of course, is going to be giving a lot of homage to the classic explorers watches. This has a smaller, tidier wear, which is going to really resonate with that and feel generally like it's going to lean more within the direction of something like an Explorer. And, it could be, of course, the roundness of the case and really just the separation. Let me give it a quick little wipe here. The separation it has away from a pilot's watch or a basic field watch because of the contouring, because of the shape, because of the feature set on here. This definitely feels like it's if you're going for more of an Explorer vibe, this is probably going to be the one that resonates the most with you, because if you were to lay all three of these watches next to a Rolex Explorer, this would feel the most like it without feeling like, essentially an homage to the Rolex Explorer. So that's something that I think still makes this watch very relevant today, especially when you think about the fact that you do have a screw down crown, 200 meters of water resistance, and it's a Seiko, so you're going to get great, aftermarket support if you do want to soup this thing up in any type of way. And of course, there's also a bunch of options. I mean, I have a really cool kind of tropical dial model that I featured a few times, even and compared it to the Hamilton over the years. But as you can see, again, different wear profile. This one's going to be more flat and tidy, but overall is going to visually appear larger. And then here, you're going to have something that's going to be a little bit rounder, the tallest out of the group at 12.9 millimeters. Of course, some of that is going to be that crystal, which I would say out of the three is probably my least favorite visually, just because it's a single curve, which means it has a curve on the outside, but not on the underside, which is going to give you that level of distortion at angle. Versus here, you're going to have, still a very slight dome, but it's just double domed. So with the dome on the underside and the outer section of the crystal, it's going to make it more legible and more of the same, of course, for here, just slightly larger. You're going to have, again, a very mild dome. I mean, some people might look at this and think it's actually flat, but the nice thing is you're going to be able to have that nice curvature, but just, without having, any types of weird distortion at harsh angles. So very nice, very legible. And again, this definitely ties more into what I feel is a classic pilot's watch and is overbuilt, especially considering Hanhart's background within aviation and this design language, whether it be the minute track, the full Arabic numerals for the hours, the handset, everything is definitely very key to this brand historically. So I feel it is a little bit more pure within its execution of saying, hey, look, this is just going to be more of an overbuilt pilot's watch. Whereas here, you get a little bit more of kind of a field watch that straddles kind of pilot vibes, which, they have very similar takes. Whereas against the Seiko, you're going to get more of a field watch that kind of straddles everyday kind of adventure vibes there. Again, this... There's no wrong or right way to interpret any of that. This is all just from my personal thoughts and, collecting and wearing these watches and watches like these over the years. So yeah, I think they all look really great. But let's close this out by getting them set up for some lume shots, low light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. Hey. Check it out. So very different in terms of the execution here. I think actually, although it has the smallest amount of lume, the strongest lume is going to be the Seiko, whereas you're going to notice second being more, again, kind of in the middle between the two is going to be that lovely new Hanhart, where the Hamilton, for a Hamilton, which they're not necessarily known for having great lume, they're actually kind of known for having, lackluster lume. This is probably one of the better lumed Hamiltons out there. So I'll go ahead and give it maybe a little bit of a blast here from some black light, just to give you a little supercharge action. And I think they all look great. They all do the job. Of course, you're going to have a loomed seconds hand. You're going to have the most lume applied, and then also, the second strongest lume there in the middle. So it's really just going to show out. Whereas, you can be a bit of a trade-off in terms of the Hamilton versus the Seiko, because the Seiko, although it's going to have powerful lume, as you can see from the hands and those lume plops, the lume plops are quite small. So, they don't take advantage of, the entire dial. Whereas here on the Hamilton, you're going to have, more dial application, in terms of there being more lume, but it's just kind of a weaker application, probably not quite as thickly applied. And then the compound itself being not quite as bright. But one thing I do always like to work in is going to be a low light transition, because I was going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming in out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So it's nice to see what these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting. And some things you're going to notice here are going to be, number one, the colors. So you're going to have the very deep, dark black dial, high contrast, white numerals, right? Really popping. And then you're going to have the really warm, by comparison, kind of more matted, almost a hint of kind of chocolatey tropical on the Hamilton. And then you're going to have this really dynamic, whether it's the gradation or that, granular texturing on the Seiko. There's definitely a lot of play there. And then, of course, within the different color palettes between the warmer and cooler tones there, it's just going to give you something a little bit more out there. Also, the applied logo of Seiko, of course, is going to be able to catch lighting pretty nicely as well. So, in terms of the build quality, they're all built really well. The Hanhart, I would say, feels very overbuilt in comparison to the Hamilton. The Hamilton feels more like a standard watch that has, I think, such a great design that it elevates it more so the design versus the build. The Hanhart definitely feels very overbuilt. The Seiko also has a similar kind of overbuilt nature to it. Maybe not quite as refined feeling, because it is, overall just, I'd say, there's, Seiko's, it's one of those things where you love it, you hate it. I love Seiko watches, so I catch the vibes. I understand what they're trying to do with this one, and I really enjoy it. I enjoy wearing it. I enjoy wearing all three of these pieces for different reasons. I will say the Hamilton kind of probably gets a short end of the stick, because it's essentially, not in every measure, but for most measures, it's just it's a not as good version of what the Hanhart has done. Whereas at least the Baby Alpinist is going to be, it's going to do enough to be quite different in terms of why you might want to wear it. And then, you're still going to get some of the play with the warmer tones there on the dial, without completely committing to the full kind of fauxtina, warm, faded aesthetic. So yeah, they're different. I like them all. If you're expecting at the end of this video me to say one is trash, one's a keeper, and one is a maybe, that's not the case at all. They are all great watches, and if you own any one of these, you should be very proud to wear it and enjoy it. There are shortcomings that I did feel like with every single one of these watches. So, whether it be, a less modern movement option, and the Hanhart, and of course, compared to Seiko's movement, completely in-house, or Hamilton's movement, I'd say you could say that's in-house-ish. It's in-group because they're made by ETA, and Swatch Group owns ETA, so it's relatively, it has a lot of the same positivities of in-house. So Hanhart is going to be more off the shelf. And after that trade-off, I feel like, the Hanhart kind of meets every other one of my preferences. Yes, I wish it did have a longer power reserve, but I'm happy that it keeps that full 4 hertz sweep. So it is beating at 28,800 vibrations per hour. So that's nice and smooth. You're also going to get a lot more lume. You're getting it applied in a really beautiful way. You're getting a lot of great details when you get up close. And at the same time, while it does have these great details, it also has a hardened steel case, right? So that's huge for daily wear. especially in a watch where you're choosing to kind of forego some of the patina aspects, and you want this to stay looking good and new for a longer period of time and fresh. So if you're investing in that, then that's great to have. But if you're not about that and you like to beat up your watches, knock them around and everything like that, then, you know, something like the Seiko will be able to give you a lot more character lines much faster. Same thing for the Hamilton. You know, my main issue with the Hamilton is that it doesn't have a screw down crown. I mean, push-pull crown, 100 meters of water resistance, that's great. But I think for the aesthetic, you know, you want to elevate it. And for me, I think they should have elevated it with that screw down crown. Just because it's so much cooler than a basic Hamilton Khaki Field. And those are amazing watches. But this one, it just elevates the it factor to like an even higher level. It's just really handsome. I mean, again, this is a watch that started out as a movie prop, that it was in such high demand, and people fanboyed and fanaticked over it enough to where Hamilton actually just had to make it. The market was there before the watch was even there, right? So, that's something to definitely appreciate and consider. And again, I love the movie Interstellar, and if I want to wear the Interstellar watch, this is the watch that I'm going to wear, is going to be the Hamilton. And then, yeah, if it's going to be more of kind of an adventure watch or something that, I'm going to feel is going to be a little bit more robust, then the Seiko makes a lot of sense as well. And then when I don't need to really like think about it, I'm just going to grab the Hamilton the Hanhart, because it has the it factor. It's cool. It's a great middle grounds. I would say, again, it's going to probably be the most versatile, and the most likable, maybe not quite as lovable for different reasons, for each of whether it be Hamilton or Seiko that you'd be pitting it against. But the Hanhart is, as a product, as a singular release, the Hanhart for me just, it does it. It's a watch I get the most excited to put on, and I don't have to think about it as much in terms of finding a reason to put it on. And that's probably the biggest difference, where, yeah, I'm going to be looking for reasons. Oh, okay, maybe the Fotina kind of goes better with these khakis, or I don't know, stuff like that. I can like justify, as somebody who has a lot of watches in rotation, oh, that'd be a good reason to wear that. Or, hey, significance of the movie, stuff like that. Great. Same for the Seiko. Hey, if I'm in a Seiko vibe, in a Seiko mood, which I typically am, I wear a lot of Seiko watches. This fits right into that. I have a whole Seiko collection, and then I have a sub collection of multiple Seiko Alpinists. And also, guys, one thing to close with for some of you that are just like, wait, why didn't you've been rambling so long, but I didn't learn enough about these watches. There are dedicated reviews for each one of these watches. So if you want to learn everything, the ins and outs, absolutely check those out. I'll leave links in the video description to everything, as well as, I'll spell out and relist some of the specs, just so you guys can have those at a glance if you want to kind of compare and contrast down to some of the minute caliper readings in the dimensions, or, get a closer look at water resistance, or the movement specs or anything like that. So let me know what you all think down in the comments below. If you like the video, please do a like, and if you're already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.